Hello, Abnormal Investigations. I hope y'all are having a great time. Still fighting allergies. We've been doing a lot of work on the farm. Man, it's been crazy. The allergies got my head all stuffed up and my eyes itching. But I'd like to invite you guys to come over, subscribe to our other channel. We got a really good video coming out today, guys. It's going to have some really fun stuff in it, and I think y'all would really enjoy it. I'll put the link to it in the description, and we'd love to have you over there. Let's get on to this encounter, guys. This happened in South Minnesota on private property on a farm. The property was rather large and heavily wooded in areas, along with a small pond and steep stream bed. It was the beginning of November when I had my encounter with this monster. My wife and I had just finished cleaning up after our yearly Halloween party. We invite the entire family out and set up a haunted trail that we always enjoy going down. It was 2 days after the party when it happened. It was about 8:50 p.m. and we had finally finished storing all the decorations and also moving our 5 horses up to the main barn from their lockout pasture. We had put them down there so we could use the main pasture for the trail. The horses did not make it very easy either. They bolted as soon as we opened the gate. We basically had to run the mile up the hill to catch them. We set out a fresh hay and locked them out there since we were going to be a hard freeze coming that night. I had just put dinner in and was enjoying the television when my phone got a text message in the kitchen. I just got to my feet when I heard the horses raising all hell out in the barn. I figured one of the dogs had got locked in without realizing. Sometimes they prefer to sleep on the hay instead of the carpet in their house. I grabbed my spotlight and I went out onto the porch to find all my dogs there, all focused on the barn. I shined it down in the lockout pasture and saw the horses all on one side of the corral staring at the open barn door. I was still thinking they had gotten spooked by something minor, like a bat flying around or a tool falling off the wall. I yelled at my wife, who was upstairs. Something spooked the horses. I'm going to round them up. Can you help? It took her a minute to reply, yeah, give me a few minutes. I called for the dogs to come with me and started for the barn. My barn's layout is important to the story details. I'll explain. It's built in the side of a small hill with the top floor level, with the top of the hill. The bottom floor is connected on 2 sides to the main pasture and at lockout pasture. The horses were in the lockout pasture. The interior is one segmented room with a large loft and a gated area for the horses to come and go as they please. The loft we used for hay and feed. There was a window on one side of the loft wall, which we keep open a few feet for the fresh air. The top level only had one door and was for storing ATVs, hunting horses, and supplies, which is always locked. I walked into the barn pasture and the horses immediately trotted to crowd me in, almost pushing me over. I yelled and they backed off, giving me some room. My wife's mare, Carrie, kept rubbing her muzzle against me, eyes wide and terrified. I began to pet her to attempt to calm her, but my hand came back wet with blood. I shined the light to her shoulder and a large fresh gash that tapered into 4 parallel cuts. I immediately thought bear and shone the light into the barn because a few tools and some buckets thrown around were nothing. I figured it smelled some of the garbage left in the upper level from the party. I was about to start to lock the horses back when I noticed a bale of hay laying on the floor, twine still on it. It was not there when I locked them up. I went rigid, and I shone my light up into the loft expecting to see a black bear, but I could only see the first couple of feet of the loft. So I had to climb up. I walked over the ladder and noticed some dark gray hair hanging on a nail about half the way up. Right before I was about to climb up, I heard my wife behind me start to scream along with the horses going crazy. I spun around to see her shining her light upward on the top of the barn. The window, I thought, and I bolted to her side and looked up. It wasn't a bear. At first I thought it was one of my younger relatives pulling a prank on me. But when it opened its mouth, oh my God, when it opened its mouth, Mike, and it started to pant like a dog, I knew it was no prank. The creature wasn't huge. It wasn't 7 or 8 feet like everybody says. This creature was he was about 6 foot tall. And let me tell you, he weighed at least 200 pounds. Nothing overbearing, nothing oversized. It was gray with lighter shade around his neck. His head was very similar to a German Shepherd, but much, much larger muzzle. And its eyes were huge. Its head was way proportionally bigger than the body. The closest I can describe in color would be maybe like a beer color, but if someone had shown a dull yellow light through it, and those eyes were locked on us. Its mouth was still open, revealing sharp and jagged teeth. Stained light brown, it was almost leaned out of the window, one hand resting on the side. Its hands resembled almost a raccoon's hands, with long bony fingers and sharp claws. My wife was about to scream again, but I shot my hand back and covered her mouth. She immediately grabbed my arm and clung to me. The creature put both hands on the window. I leaned down and whispered, "Run on 3. Don't look back, and run like hell." The creature jumped down and went to all fours and growled. We bolted. The 25-yard gap between the house and the barn seemed to take minutes, but it only took probably 20 to 30 seconds. The dogs all ran back to the deck and were growling and baring their teeth and barking, but also whimpering. My wife reached the door first and flung it open. She turned and screamed. I risked a glance behind as I saw how close it was. It was within 10 feet of us. I reached the front steps and jumped as hard as I could, for I could, and thankfully landed inside with the dogs behind me. My wife slammed the door, and it was thrown back as the door flung back open, the creature standing up, now baring teeth, but thankfully the door slammed back and was only slightly open because my wife had kicked the door closed from laying on her butt. I saw the porch light through the crack of the door. It started to be blocked out and quickly kicked it shut again. I sprung to my feet, put all my weight into it. I felt the creature slam into the door and heard the wood crack. My wife, thankfully, had recovered and rushed to my side to set the lock in place. We left the entryway, locking another door behind us, and ran into our kitchen. The only window was a small one above the sink, which we hid under, hopefully out of sight. I luckily had a pistol in the kitchen, but it was in the window sill. I reached up and grabbed the small .22 caliber. We huddled there for 3 hours, all while the creature was running along the house, banging on the windows, the walls, the doors. Our each dogs sat in different entryways of the rooms, growling, barking, and sometimes whining. They bared their teeth at one time. They must have seen it in the windows. A few times we saw a shadow on the floor in front of us from the kitchen window. Not too long after that, we heard the horses whinny, followed by a loud crash. I figured that they had broke down the gate to escape into the pasture. We felt relieved until one of the dogs bared its teeth a moment later, and the assault on the house continued. It was midnight when things settled down and the dogs no longer bared their teeth. We went to the bedroom, shut all the curtains, and locked the door. We tried to sleep, but very little sound outside made me jump. Every little sound made me jump, and my wife was worried about the horses. Finally, we managed to sleep, and at the crack of dawn, but only a few hours, we had made it. When I awoke, we immediately went to check the horses. Thankfully, they were all fine, terrified but fine, and the only wounded one was my wife's mare. The morning sun revealed that the gash of the beast had already stopped bleeding. We patched her up and started preparing and repairing the door. But as it turns out, it didn't need repairs at all. We had used a heavy bolt lock the horses in. It was undone, and the latch was flipped. I realized that this thing had to be very intelligent. That day we went into town. One stop to get a deadbolt for the barn, and another, my sporting goods store, for a new high-powered rifle. But ever since that night we had no more encounters because I placed lights all around the barn, and I also put up my game cameras that I use for hunting. It has been so quiet and peaceful at the house now. The lights around our house and everything that we wired up has put the creature at bay. The horses are now calm. They're not afraid at night no longer. Mike, the lights really do work, and so do the cameras. That is a good story. You know, you talk about the head being so much bigger than the body. That is a lot of stories, that talk about that. And I actually had that conversation with Scott the other day. We were talking about how a lot of the reports the head is larger than the body. Now, the one my mom seen, she said its head wasn't so much larger than the body. So I'm wondering, are those the juveniles? I wonder that the heads are larger than the body and they're having to grow into them, because he said this one was only probably, 6 foot and weighed about 200 pounds. And another thing in the story that really caught my attention is where he said the hand looked like a possum's hand. Do y'all remember what my granny said in a story I told long ago when it reached its arm in her bathroom window? She said it almost looked like a possum's hand with long fingernails. So that really caught my attention. I hope you enjoy this drop today, guys. I thank each and every one of you for watching these videos, hitting the like button. We're going to be doing a boots on the ground, I believe, tonight. If not tonight, it'll be tomorrow. It's going to be very, very soon. So be watching for that. We'll probably go live from location. Thank you for watching, guys. Keep your head on a swivel and don't be something's dinner. We'll see you on the next one.